Doug, we're going to talk about confidence. I love this subject. And there's two parts to confidence, of course. This chat we're going to have is about the confidence we have in our ability. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Okay, so this particular section of the mental toughness concept is of special interest to us because this is what my colleague, Professor Peter Clough, brought to the broad understanding of what mental toughness was. It used to be called hardiness and used to cover the other three C's, commitment, control, and challenge. But it's really odd that something like confidence had been overlooked. And he said, well, he thought confidence was important. He researched it, and we found that confidence was indeed important. And his initial hypothesis was that this was about having confidence in your abilities. So it's not about abilities, really. It's about self-belief. So it is perfectly possible to have a lot of ability and to doubt your abilities.
Yeah.
So at one end of the scale, at the more mentally sensitive end, you have people who doubt themselves, who hesitate, who think other people have got more abilities than they have. And they might, but often they don't. And at the other end, the mentally tough end of the scale, is you believe in your abilities. You think you've got lots of abilities. Sadly, sometimes you don't have the abilities you think you've got, but most of the time you do. And they don't give sufficient weight to their experiences and their knowledge and their skills. And if they do give sufficient weight, then they're more likely to use them. So people who are more mentally sensitive in this regard will have skills, but they won't use them. People who are more mentally tough will have skills and they will use them. And so it's about optimizing your skill set.
I meet so many people when I'm out and about speaking at conferences, and they always love the confidence thing. And more often than not, it is quite often women actually who doubt their ability, but they actually have a very high level of skill. They just don't think they can do that thing. And it's really frustrating for me because I just want to shake them and say, but you're brilliant. Of course you can do it. But the confidence is something that I find so many people would love to develop. And I know when I was at school, because I was a very quiet kid, never fitted in anywhere because I was very confused by life as growing up. I was a massive underachiever at school, and I didn't have, as I saw it, any skill in anything. So my confidence as a kid was rock bottom. I was the kid that got 47% in every exam, and all my mates were getting 98%, and I just couldn't understand why I didn't have the brains they had. And I used to beat myself up constantly. But at the same time, I wasn't really motivated to study harder either, because I just was much more interested in, life rather than, I was just never an academic. So I had very low confidence all of my growing up years. And then when I left home very young and I went to London and I was fending for myself, I realized that I was prepared to do stuff that no one else was prepared to do. And that gave me a sense of confidence that, even if I don't think I can do it, I reckon I can find a way to do it. I'm going to tell people I can do it, and I will go away and find out a way or find people. But that, I think, helped my confidence to grow, because when I had a go at something, it tended to be okay. And then my confidence grew. And I think as my confidence grew, my dreams got bigger, and things I was prepared to go for didn't feel so daunting. And I had this weird, although I had low confidence in sort of skill, I had quite a high confidence in my resourcefulness. And I remember seeing people around me thinking that they haven't got that thing in them. I'm really happy to throw myself full into something, knowing that somehow I'm going to work it out. Again, which is probably very irritating for people around, but taking action for me was always an important thing. So whether I thought I could do something or I couldn't, I had to try something, take a step. And it was only recently I was reading this thing that the word motivation comes from Latin. The movere is the Latin word, and it really means to move. So if you want to to develop motivation, you just have to start doing something. You have to take an action. You have to move in some way, and that can start to build some excitement, and it pays back. So yeah, I now have a higher level of confidence in my ability. I don't think I'm particularly skilled at anything still, but I'll find a way.
Yeah, but people underestimate their own abilities, and funnily enough, you've picked up a number of points in what you've spoken of. The first thing I'll say is it's the most misunderstood of the 4 C's, but it's the one that people are most familiar with. So, for instance, we do a lot of work in secondary education, and time after time we go into schools and the teachers will say, so and so, well, these children have got a problem with confidence. And when we assess them, they don't. In fact, of the 4 C's, they've got more confidence than they have the other C's. And people tend to mix the others up. And when they're talking about confidence, they're really talking about one of the other factors. The second thing is you spoke about it, you developing it. Of the 4 major components of mental toughness, this is the most plastic one. In other words, it can go up and down, and it can go up and down quite violently in times of trauma. So if something big happens, like a death, or you lose a pet, or you go to Afghanistan or something like that, it can go up or down. Funny enough, it can go up in trauma, and people don't appreciate that. It's just that we tend to focus on people who suffer post-traumatic stress disorder. We never pay attention to post-traumatic growth because they're okay, but it happens just as often. So confidence and abilities matters, and it matters more than people think. And there's a little example. There's a Canadian psychologist called Dinspear. He was working with young people, and he believed that physiological toughening led to psychological toughening. And he did an interesting experiment that tied in with this. He would take groups of young people out for outdoor experiences in the Canadian wilderness. And their wilderness is a lot different to sort of rambling around the Lake District. And they might go out for 4 or 5 days, and they'd be given a tent, basic food supplies, and they'd have to cook over an open fire, things they'd never done before. And he did something interesting. He got them to complete tests before and after, maths tests before and after doing these hikes. And to his surprise, well, maybe not to his surprise, maybe he was expecting it, he found that the test results were higher after people had done these hikes than beforehand. And he'd realized that, well, he wasn't stopping in the middle of the wilderness to do any maths lessons. So it couldn't be down to that. What he'd actually been doing is developing their confidence, the self-belief in themselves to be able to do things. So when they came back, so before they went, if they looked at an exam question and thought, I'm not sure about the answer, they wouldn't put an answer down. Or they would hesitate and put the wrong answer down. And they'll think, oh, is it this, is it that? When they came back and they're a lot more confident, they'll say, oh, I think I know the answer to that, I'm going to put that down.
Yeah.
And they were more likely to answer more questions and answer the questions with that degree of confidence and go with their first thought, which is often the better thought. So their performance was higher. And to have abilities is important, but to believe in your abilities is just as important, because that's what will give you the output. And now we've got stacks of research around the place that shows that abilities are important, they're very useful, but abilities when combined with mental toughness allows you to optimize.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, what can I add to that? It's for me, it's and also I have grown confidence in things. So the first time I try something, I'm going to be pretty average or below average at it. But I know that if I try something 100 times, I'm going to get better. My confidence grows as I repeatedly do something. And a lot of people would be put off by if they try something a couple of times, it doesn't go so well, they'll lose confidence and sort of walk away from it. And I know from my experience, if you can persist and repeat this exercise, whatever it might be, your confidence will grow. It's all about taking the action and just
The moment we stumbled across this was we'd been given a project to work with customs and excise in the 1990s in preparation for their merger with Inland Revenue. And they wanted to make sure that the senior management, and there were 700 people we had to work with, were ready mentally for the merger, because they thought that there'd be quite a lot of politicking and clashes and stuff like that. But customs and excise had two sides. One was the excise bit, which is basically tax collecting, VAT. And these were all clerks and people of that type, administrative types. The other side was customs. And these were the people working with drug smugglers and so on. And these were people with scars on their faces and stuff like that. And they were quite very different beasts. So we thought, right, let's see how these people can work together. Let's see if they can learn to work with different types of people. So we designed exercises, and we would put 6 people from the excise side and 6 people from the customs side into a room, and then give them a problem to solve. And the problem could be from one side or the other, but we found that we would create a problem from the tax side, put it on the table. Now, so the tax people would be the real experts, the customs people wouldn't. And we wanted to see to what extent the customs people would work with the excise people to understand the problem and contribute to it, and the extent to which excise people engaged with that didn't happen. Every single time, the customs people just took over, decided what was going to happen, and got the excise people to agree with it, even when the excise people knew it was the wrong solution.
Wow.
And the difference was, the admin people dealing with that, they didn't particularly need to have particularly high interpersonal skills. The VAT people did, because they were using them every day. So they just took over. And so they had the supreme belief in their abilities that the excise people didn't. And when the dust settled, we realized we had got to the bottom of understanding what self-belief was.
How interesting. How are you about tell me about you, right, in terms of confidence in your ability?
Well, I think I've always had a degree of confidence in my ability, but from time to time, I have doubted it. Time to time, it's been knocked. I mean, when I first started doing presentations, and so at my peak, I was doing 70 face-to-face presentations a year. But when I first started, I not only was I nervous about doing them, I didn't believe I could do them very well. But in all probability, the first few weren't very good.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a bit of time for me to kind of come to terms with it, to contextualize it, and that's very supportive people around me, and to learn how to do it better. So bit by bit, I began to have confidence in the things I know. I realized, I can remember once the penny dropping that somebody said, "Look, Doug, you've got 40 or 50 people in the room. There might be difficult people, but you know more about the subject than they do. And even if they ask you awkward questions, you still know more about the subject than they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here." So
Yeah.
I began to think, oh, right, yeah, that's probably true. I've got some expertise there that they haven't got, but trust yourself with it. And then in developing skills, I learned how to manage an audience, which is quite important. I mean, when I started, I would talk over the heads of the audience, talk to the brick wall at the back of the room. What I very quickly learned was find a friendly face, focus on that friendly face. I might have made it uncomfortable for that person, but I would speak directly to that person, and it would come over as a personal, a personal presentation, as if I was talking to a real person, not to a room.
Yeah.
And so you kind of learn tools and techniques and you build your confidence that way.
Yeah, that's exactly the same for me. I used to speak, I've spoken for years at events, and looking back, it was pretty poor when I was started out. And it's definitely, my confidence is higher, the content is better, and the way I deliver it and everything is I've got a new level of confidence in what I do, which is it's a really nice feeling,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. Well, I've got a
This,
very specific example. In the middle of COVID, our hob went. And of course, in the middle of COVID, you couldn't get hold of an electrician. And ours was a gas hob, so we needed a gas electrician. They're rare as hen's teeth. I finally found one. And he said, well, I will come out but I can't get the component. If you can get the components, I'll come out. Within 30 minutes, I'd found the components and ordered it online. Got in touch with him, he never turned up, never ever came. And when the components arrived, I looked at it and I thought, well, I think I could manage this. And so what I did was I dismantled everything, I disconnected everything, dismantled everything carefully, recorded every step so I could then put it back together, found the component, and it was literally just a matter of unplugging the faulty component and plugging in the new one, and then reassembled it and tested it. So I had enough belief in my abilities to do it, and it still works. So
wow, that would give me a massive sense of achievement. Well done. I know who to call now when my hob goes. But listen, we ought to wrap this one up, but we could talk about it forever, of course. We both speak at live events about mental toughness, and love sharing the concepts and helping people to increase their own self-awareness. And I know that at AQR you're very keen to promote your mental toughness assessment and getting people engaged to see where they are in terms of their own mental toughness and where they might develop it.